sudden to announce he's pulling U.S. troops out of northern Syria.
Yeah, it seems like it's very much based on, policy by grievance. If you looked at his tweet, it's all about how NATO's not doing enough, or European allies need to do enough. We've been over there too long. But it's not in the national security interest. If you believe ISIS is still a threat to American interests and to our allies and partners, which it is, and the military and the intelligence communities say that, then you got to sustain the victory over them. You've destroyed them physically on the ground, yes, but you haven't destroyed them as a network. That's what those small troops were doing in Syria to help defeat the network and to create a sustainable set of conditions that they couldn't resurge. So pulling them out like that, letting Turkey come in, that's only going to make it harder for the SDF, our allies, our Kurdish allies and friends, to fight ISIS, because they're going to be wanting, I'm sure, forced to react to Turkish and Kurdish.
Swift bipartisan condemnation of the president's decision, including from obviously Republicans. Gloria, huge mistake, betraying an ally, disastrous, ensures ISIS comeback, short-sighted and irresponsible, a stain on America's honor, a catastrophic mistake, terribly unwise decision. I could go on.
Right.
These are from Republicans, including Republican leaders.
You know what I want to know? I want to know if General Mattis is going to say something at some point, because this is why he left. This is why he quit. Yeah. He said he couldn't agree with policy. It was shortly after the president announced his Syria policy. And I'm sure he agrees with all of these quotes that you just showed up on the screen. And I'm sure the president is kind of stewing, because he clearly wanted to change the subject from all of this, but he's changed the subject to something that that is enormously unpopular. And Republicans, I think, don't, they can say this because, unlike with impeachment, there's no political price to Republicans for disagreeing with the president on Syria the way there is on Ukraine, in terms of they've got to support him on that. So here they are.
Also, some level of safety in numbers, too, by the way. I mean, one of the things that you'll see with impeachment is if they're going to jump, many of them will jump at the same time. You saw all of those statements come out this morning. But Gloria's exactly right. The difference between coming out in favor of impeachment versus coming out in favor of Syria, the American voter by and large does not make decisions based on where your senator or even your president's position is vis-a-vis Syria.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
But isn't it true that the public, not 100%, is more with Trump than with the politicians on this one? Do you think there's an enormous desire for our troops to be over in Syria for years more, to be in Afghanistan for almost 20 years? I mean, I think the president may have his finger on the pulse. Now, I don't know if it's in the national security interest, but I don't see this as a political negative for the president at all.
Yeah, it's certainly what he ran on, right? I mean, he sounded a bit like Rand Paul as he was running for the Republican nomination, and clearly got the Republican nomination and is in many ways governed in this way. And you saw Rand Paul come out and say, yes, that he agrees with this decision. A little, odd that it comes out at this point as the president is trying to, get Republicans to hold the line on Ukraine and not revolt. We've seen very few signs that any Republicans are going to break away from him in any serious way on the Ukraine scandal. But with this, we did see sort of Republicans remember who they are, right, in terms of national security policy, and just in terms of being hawks when it comes to national security.
And a reminder, I think, too, just to Nia's point, a reminder of how radically different Donald Trump's vision, I don't know if you call it conservatism, but Donald Trump's vision of Trumpism on the domestic and the international front is from traditional conservative policy proposals. Look at what George Bush said and did, George W. Bush versus Donald Trump. You would think they were not just from different parties, but from different planets in terms of their approach.
That would make him very happy to hear, by the way.
I
will. Trump.
Yeah, he'll love that. No, and that's to Jeffrey's point. Politically speaking, he's probably right. People are sick of these foreign entanglements.
John,
but
I used to interview Donald Trump all the time before he became president of the United States, going back 20 years plus, and he's been on this issue. He's been very consistent. Get the troops out of Iraq, get them out of Afghanistan. At that time, there were no troops in Syria. But he didn't even want troops in Japan or South Korea or Germany. Why are they there? Right. The United States is spending too much. He would say that consistently for the longest time.
Right. And look, I understand that many Americans are uncomfortable with troops being deployed in harm's way for extended periods of time. And many troops they're bearing the brunt of that. And I think they would appreciate a break as well. But there are some real significant pragmatic reasons for our national security to have them doing certain things. The footprint in Syria hasn't been that big. It's been very specifically targeted against ISIS, and ISIS was and remains a legitimate threat to our interest and those of our allies.
Tonight, the former Vice President Joe Biden is facing a two-front challenge, responding to President Trump's attacks as well as coping with Senator Elizabeth Warren's surge in recent polls. Our senior Washington correspondent, Jeff Zeleny, is keeping his eye on all of this. So what are you seeing, Jeff? How's he coping with these threats?
Well, there's no question that Joe Biden has wanted one thing all along. That's a head-to-head matchup with the president. Now that he has that, at least in some respects rhetorically, he is struggling to, of course, respond to that. But we've seen over the weekend and in recent days him sharpening his rhetoric against the president, defending himself even more. Of course, the Biden campaign has been getting a ton of advice on how to handle this situation. He did not want, I'm told, the president to hijack his campaign message, but he also wanted to push back forcefully. But I talked to one senior confidant to the former vice president who said they really are not sure what the politics of this long term will be. Listen to what this confidant told me. He said, I'm not going to sit here and say there is no concern. As this drags on, we don't know. No one knows. So the Biden campaign is making it clear that they believe this head-to-head matchup with him is good, but they, of course, are keeping their eye on Elizabeth Warren. She's been rising in the polls and, of course, raising $10 million more in the third quarter here, Wolf. So this combined challenge makes things very uncertain for this presidential race. The
Biden folks, they're pointing to a new poll in a key state that suggests he has the best chance of beating President Trump.
It does, and that is one thing that really bolsters the Biden argument, they say, all along. This poll in Wisconsin, take a look at these numbers out today in this brand new poll. Joe Biden, Donald Trump, 48 to 39, 9 percentage points there, a difference. When you go on to Bernie Sanders versus President Trump, or Elizabeth Warren right there, 45-41, and then Bernie Sanders, 45 to 40. So about in the same range there for President Trump, but Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are still slightly behind Joe Biden. So the Biden campaign making the argument that he is the strongest Democrat to take him on. But Wolf, again, we do not know where this impeachment inquiry is going. No one knows the politics of this or how it will play out for Joe Biden.
Very intriguing indeed. All right, Jeff Zeleny, thanks very much. Coming up, the NBA Rick rolled. The president tries to blame his energy secretary for his now infamous call to the Ukrainian president. But Rick Perry is pushing back. Why is Mr. Trump pointing fingers when he insists his call was perfect? Unmatched wisdom. The president brazenly claims his judgment is great and unparalleled as he defends his abrupt decision to withdraw troops from Syria and abandon U.S. allies against ISIS. Tonight, top Republicans who usually refuse to rebuke him are angry, and they are speaking out. And key witness gunned down. Just days after a former police officer was found guilty of murder, a man who reluctantly testified in a trial has been shot and killed. This hour, the manhunt and the mystery. We want to welcome our viewers in the United States and around the world. I'm Wolf Blitzer. You're in the Situation Room.
This is CNN Breaking News.
We're following breaking news on new efforts to protect the identity of the whistleblower who exposed the Ukraine scandal. Sources now tell CNN Democrats are considering what are being described as extreme measures if the whistleblower testifies before Congress, including hiding the individual's face and voice. Also breaking, impeachment investigators churn out more subpoenas. They're now demanding documents from the Pentagon and the White House Budget Office related to the president's decision to withhold military assistance to Ukraine. They're also threatening to subpoena associates of the president's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. This hour, I'll talk with House Armed Services Committee member John Garamendi. It's his first interview since returning from a congressional trip to Ukraine. And our correspondents and analysts are also standing by. First, let's go to our congressional correspondent, Sunlen Serfati. Sunlen, Democrats are very worried about the whistleblower's safety during possible congressional testimony.
That's right, indeed they are, Wolf. And sources telling CNN tonight that, quote unquote, extreme measures are being discussed right now in order to protect the whistleblower's safety and identity when and if this person ultimately decides to potentially appear before the committees and let their side of the story be known. There are a variety of options right now being discussed in these negotiations to get this person in front of the committees. Things like potentially disguising the whistleblower's identity, disguising their voice, potentially limiting the number of people who will hear this person in the room, limiting the number of Hill staff, limiting the number of members in the room, and also the possibility, Wolf, of using an off-site location, going away from a secure room on Capitol Hill to hold this very important testimony, all to make sure, of course, that the whistleblower's name is not ultimately leaked to someone not only within the Trump administration, but within the press. Now, this also comes as House Democrats today are ramping it up and essentially broadening out their own impeachment investigation, today issuing subpoenas to the Pentagon and the Office of Management and Budget. They want to know, they want documents, they want information related to the sequencing of events of the withholding of military aid to the Ukraine, and no word yet how the response will go.
All right, Sunderland, thanks for that update. Sunderland Srifati up on Capitol Hill. As the Trump administration is hit with new subpoenas, President Trump also is under fire for a major shift in U.S. policy in Syria. Let's go to our chief White House correspondent, Jim Acosta. Jim, we heard from the president just a little while ago.
Oh, that's right, Wolf. And the impeachment inquiry is certainly getting to President Trump. Just a short while ago, he complained the inquiry is making his job tougher. And the president is behaving more unpredictably these days as the impeachment inquiry ensnares more members of his administration. The president whipped up another firestorm in the meantime over Syria, announcing he's given the green light to Turkey to wipe out Kurdish forces that had helped the U.S. defeat ISIS in that country. Republicans are pushing back against the president when it comes to that policy, but not so much when it comes to Ukraine.
President Trump is complaining that the prospect of being impeached is making life in the Oval Office more difficult.
First of all, the impeachment inquiry is a scam. I think it makes it harder to do my job. But I do my job, and I do it better than anybody's done it for the first 2.5 years.
But the Trump administration is sinking deeper into the impeachment quicksand up on Capitol Hill, as House Democrats have issued new subpoenas to Defense Secretary Mark Esper and the acting head of the Office of Management and Budget for information about the president's phone call with the leader of Ukraine that included a request for dirt on Joe Biden. The letter doesn't mince words, insisting each subpoena compels you to produce the documents by October 15, 2019. With a second whistleblower coming forward, White House allies are trotting out shifting explanations for the president's comments, with some in the GOP claiming Mr. Trump was only joking when he asked China to investigate Biden.
You really think he was serious about thinking that China's going to investigate the Biden family?
He said it right there in public.
I think he's getting, as I think Senator Rubio said a couple days ago, I think he's getting the press all spun up about this.
Though economic advisor Larry Kudlow wasn't sure about that.
Larry, is the president joking or in any way not serious when he suggested that the Chinese should investigate the Biden?
I don't honestly know.
But the president is also claiming Energy Secretary Rick Perry urged him to turn to the Ukrainians.
Absolutely. I asked the president multiple times, Mr. President, we think it is in the United States and in Ukraine's best interest that you and the president of Ukraine have conversations, that you discuss the options that are there. So absolutely yes.
Even though Perry insisted Biden didn't come up.
It's not once, as God is my witness, not once was a Biden name, not the former vice president, not his son, ever mentioned.
The president and his defenders sounded unhinged at times over the weekend, with Mr. Trump tweeting House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was guilty of treason and that Utah Senator Mitt Romney is a pompous ass. GOP Senator Ron Johnson, chair of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, stood by Mr. Trump by saying he doesn't trust parts of the intelligence community.
You believe the FBI and the CIA,
John Brennan? No, I don't trust any of these guys in the Obama administration. I don't trust any of them.
The president offered up a new distraction from the impeachment drama, announcing he will allow Turkey to sweep into Syria, withdrawing U.S. forces and jeopardizing Kurdish fighters who have helped in the battle against ISIS. But Mr. Trump warned if Turkey does anything that I, in my great and unmatched wisdom, consider to be off limits, I will totally destroy and obliterate the economy of Turkey. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell took issue with the president, stating a precipitous withdrawal of U.S. forces from Syria would only benefit Russia, Iran, and the Assad regime, and it would increase the risk that ISIS and other terrorist groups regroup. A rare moment of dissent from inside the GOP.
ISIS is not defeated, my friend. The biggest lie being told by the administration that ISIS is defeated. This impulsive decision by the president has undone all the gains we've made, thrown the region into further chaos.
The president was asked why he's siding with autocratic leaders over the nation's Kurdish allies.
Well, I'm not siding with anybody. We want to bring our troops back home, and I got elected on that.
And the president told reporters he did consult with top military commanders before making this decision on Syria. As for Ukraine, there is one more Republican senator to emerge to criticize Mr. Trump's phone call with the president of that country. Ohio Senator Rob Portman told the Columbus Dispatch that the president should not have raised the Biden issue on that call, period, in the senator's words. But the senator said the president's actions do not warrant impeachment. Despite that, Wolf, though, it does not sound, though, that the Republican Party is as unified tonight as it was last week. Wolf.
Jim Acosta at the White House, thank you. Let's get some more on the president's Syria announcement and the fallout, which is dramatic. Our Pentagon correspondent Barbara Starr is joining us. Barbara, the president says he consulted with everybody about the move. Why are so many Republicans speaking out so strongly, though, against him on this specific issue?
Well, Wolf, it's hard to come to any other conclusion, but it may be because top military generals did not want to see this withdrawal, including Defense Secretary Mark Esper, by the way. For the last several days, we have seen public messaging from the Pentagon that the Kurdish forces are doing everything the U.S. asked them to try and de-escalate the situation on the border. Suddenly, we have the president's announcement, and the president has given multiple explanations for his decision. He has said he's moved a small number of U.S. troops out of northern Syria, pulled them further back for their own safety and security if and when the Turks do cross the border, which he does not appear to widely object to. But make no mistake, he has not wanted U.S. troops to be in Syria, and he also today talked about, you saw it there in Jim Acosta's piece, he was elected on bringing U.S. troops home, and he truly believes that that is the way he wants to go. The only problem is, right now, it is hard to see a way ahead. The next time the U.S. military needs help from local forces on the ground in any country in the world, those local forces may well remember that the Kurds have essentially been abandoned by the U.S. Wolf?
Barbara Starr at the Pentagon, thank you. Joining us now, Congressman John Garamendi. He's a Democrat who serves on the Armed Services Committee. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. And I want to get to this issue of Syria in just a few moments, but you have just returned from leading a congressional delegation to Ukraine. You met with the Ukrainian defense minister, the foreign minister, the senior staffer, President Zelensky, the top American diplomat in Ukraine, Bill Taylor, the charge d'affaires. What can you tell us about this trip?
Well, I can tell you that Ukraine is an exceptional country and they have exceptional leaders. Given all that's happened to them, given all that the president has done to this new president who came into office on cleaning up the corruption, on leaning to the West, totally dependent upon the West and specifically America, and then for Trump to do what he has done, they are showing enormous strength, enormous courage. They're soldiering on. They've lost almost 14,000 people, soldiers, to the Russians in the battle. It is a hot war. They're going to make it. They're going to do it despite what Trump has done to them. It's just, well, chalk up one more win for Putin. But they're going to soldier on. I was very, very impressed by what they intend to do.
We've seen some of Bill Taylor's text messages. Bill Taylor, the top U.S. diplomat, the acting ambassador in Kiev right now, including one where he said, and I'm quoting now, I think it's crazy to withhold security assistance for help with a political campaign. What did you learn from him during your conversations?
I learned that we have a very good man at that embassy. We had a long conversation about what is going on in the country, about his own long career in the diplomacy and also in Ukraine. A good person, obviously a person that saw what was the problem and spoke out, or at least in an email laid it out. He was Well, the morning that email became known, we met with him just moments afterwards, and he acknowledged that it was there, and he said it was the right thing to do. We're lucky that he's there. We're just going to have to try to overcome the enormous problem that Trump has created in that country, to say nothing of what he's created here in the United States.
Does he believe that the President of the United States was squeezing the new Ukrainian President Zelensky for dirt on the Bidens in exchange for U.S. aid, U.S. assistance, for a high-level meeting in Washington with Zelensky?
Yeah. We didn't discuss that. However, his email indicates that he was very much aware of what was going on and obviously concerned about it. Given the nature of the meetings we had, we didn't ask him. We were not there to investigate. That's going to come in the halls of Congress in the days ahead.
But what was your impression, though, based not necessarily simply from the top U.S. diplomat in Kiev, but from others with whom you had conversations, including high-level Ukrainian officials?
Well, I think Zelensky said it as well as a person in his position could possibly say it. And that's, oh, it wasn't pressure. Well, what else is he going to say when he's totally dependent on the United States and NATO allies for the continuation of his efforts to push Russia out of his country? Clearly, they knew what was going on. These are not naive people. These are extremely smart people. They know that they're going to have to mind their P's and Q's. They're going to have to say the right thing at the right time. They can't further anger the president, who clearly in the days ahead has the power to withhold money once again. And so they're going to be careful. They're smart. They also want to deal with corruption. In the meeting with the Minister of Defense, we had a long conversation about their efforts to root out corruption in the military, and they actually would like to have an inspector general team go to Ukraine and teach them how to establish an inspector general. We can see what good that brings to America when we have such a person in place.
So you met with the foreign minister of Ukraine, the defense minister, the senior staff for President Zelensky. Did you discuss the whole issue, the Biden issue, Hunter Biden serving on the board of this Ukrainian gas company? Did you discuss any of the allegations that the President of the United States and Rudy Giuliani have leveled?
Actually, we did not. However, the foreign minister alluded to it in our opening, and we quickly put that out of the way and got to the things that I wanted to deal with there, which is how can we support Ukraine? What can we do further? How can we avoid the kind of problem that Trump has created, establishing relationships, making sure that money flows, and whatever additional support they might need? That's why we were there. The foreign minister did allude to that, and we moved on.
How did he allude to it? What did he say?
I don't remember the exact conversation, but he said that with all the things going on, he recognized that we were there at a difficult time.
But he didn't want to get into specifics because he felt under pressure from the U.S.?
Well, of course there was pressure from the U.S. It's in the president's own transcription of his phone call. There's considerable pressure. $400 million of critical military aid was put on hold. And then there was a phone call. And then there were further discussions, all the things Giuliani and everybody else involved in trying to dig dirt. So, of course, they knew there was serious pressure. And keep in mind that the Minister of Defense had been on the job 2 weeks when we arrived. And he's trying to gain civilian control over the military, deal with the corruption in the past, and they have enormous tasks. And Trump, all that Trump managed to do was really hit that government right in the gut at a very critical time as they were trying to build their new government and to deal with the mandate that the people had given them. Not only a 75% vote for Zelensky in the presidential election, but then an overwhelming majority in their parliament. And then for Trump to come in and to hit them, to hit that government and that president as he did, it was only one winner in all of that, and that is Putin. An enormous gift to Putin on top of all of the other things that this president has done for Putin. Everything from demeaning and demoralizing our national security agencies, the FBI, CIA, the nuclear agreement with Iran, all of these things, and now Syria. Boy, you just chalk up, put the scoreboard up there in just the first 5 innings. Win for Putin, and once again, every time it's another win for Putin and another harm to our alliances and to our really key allies. And keep in mind that Ukraine is an ally. Ukraine was invaded by Russia. Crimea was stolen from Ukraine, and a war is going on now, right now, in Ukraine. It's nighttime, and the mortars are falling on top of Ukraine soldiers now. And what does Trump do? Well, he tries to get dirt on Biden and leverages, extorts the new president.
We're back with breaking news on what House Democrats may be doing to try to protect the Ukraine scandal whistleblower after repeated attacks by President Trump. Sources now tell CNN the whistleblower's face and voice may be disguised during possible House testimony. That's one of the extreme measures being considered. Let's bring in our correspondents and our analysts. Phil Mudd, they're trying to make sure this guy is okay, this whistleblower, and there may be 2 whistleblowers now, that they'll be protected. Their security will be okay. What do you think?
Boy, I'm surprised it's held this long. Remember, there aren't a million people who go through those kinds of positions at the White House. There have to be still White House people connected to the president who know who this individual is. My point here is they can do whatever they want, but surprisingly in this town, we're relying on people's courtesy and professionalism not to speak. If somebody decides this is so politically charged, I'm going to put the name out, there's nothing you can do. If I were this individual, I'd be telling the government, you better have some place for me to go set up, because just physical security of guards isn't good enough. This individual will have to relocate.
Because the president has said, Dana, that he wants to meet this whistleblower, be confronted by the whistleblower, because he suggested that the information he had second and third hand, that there were spies who gave him this information. You've heard the comments of the president.
Yeah, inappropriate, and that's not my word. That's the word of the few Republicans who have spoken out, especially including senior Republicans like Chuck Grassley. That was kind of the line that they drew, not necessarily on the substance of the president's call, but on the notion that he's trying to call out the whistleblower. It still kind of blows the mind to think about the fact that this is the president of the United States potentially putting somebody who followed the law, who followed the rules, didn't leak, as he likes to talk about it, and sort of cast aspersions on those who leak information. He did exactly what he is supposed to do when he sees something he doesn't believe is legal. And the fact that he is potentially in danger because of the president of the United States. Do you ever think you would see that?
And also because if you look at the House Intelligence Committee, there are fewer committees that have become more riven by partisan divisions. The ranking member, Devin Nunes, a very close ally of the president's. And so you can see why some of these committees might want, it's not just about protecting the identity from the president, but also from his allies, many of whom are members of Congress themselves. That is really, to me, that is the extraordinary part. The members of Congress do not trust each other to keep this person's identity protected, even though by law, this whistleblower is entitled not only to the anonymity, but also to protection from retribution. That's the part that a lot of Republicans recently have not wanted to remember about why whistleblower protections.
And the same Republicans who relied on whistleblowers in their investigations during the Obama administration.
Exactly.
And it's not just, retribution and job security, Jamie Gangel, but it's also the physical security, the threat potentially to the life of this whistleblower that is of deep concern to so many members.
Absolutely. There's only one word for this. It is outrageous. This should never have been the case. And for this person to feel that there's a threat against their life, for the committee to have to protect him from other members, this is beyond through the looking glass, Wolf. It's just outrageous.
At the same time, these committees now are demanding from the Pentagon documents, Office of Management and Budget documents. They're trying to figure out why the military aid to Ukraine was withheld. Was it withheld as leverage to try to get? We're following the breaking news in the Ukraine scandal. As House Democrats issue new subpoenas, Republicans They are struggling with their strategy against impeachment. Let's go back to our chief political correspondent, Dana Bash. Dana, what are you hearing from Republicans?
Well, Republican leaders in the House did a conference call with House Republicans who are spread out all in their districts because they're in recess this week. And they said that they did polling on 31 Trump districts, and they insist that impeachment is hurting Democrats, not Republicans. They're trying to spin it as much as they can.
Most Republicans are so unsure about how to play this, they're in virtual hiding. And the few who are speaking out, well, listen to House GOP leader Kevin McCarthy this morning.
You watched what the president said. He's not saying China's investigating.
Actually, he did. Listen.
China should start an investigation into the Bidens.
Some Republicans tried to explain that away with a different tactic, deflect, claiming Trump was just kidding.
Well, I doubt if the China comment was serious, to tell you the truth.
CNN contacted more than 80 GOP congressional offices about the president inviting China to investigate his political rival. Barely a handful responded, most notably Mitt Romney, who said the president's brazen and unprecedented appeal to China and to Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden is wrong and appalling. In response, the president went after Romney, calling him pompous and a fool, clearly intended as a warning to other Republicans weighing whether to speak out. It didn't stop Maine's Susan Collins, who did criticize the president, which plays well with Democrats she needs to win re-election in her blue state. She said the president made a big mistake by asking China to get involved in investigating a political opponent. But she also echoed Trump's loyalists, pummeling the House Democrat leading the impeachment probe.
The chairman of the House Intelligence Committee misrepresented and misled people about what was in the transcript.
Mitch McConnell, also on the ballot in 2020, is raising money for his Kentucky race with a promise to protect the president.
All of you know your Constitution. The way that impeachment stops is when the Senate majority, with me as majority leader.
McConnell's campaign aides argue that impeachment is galvanizing the GOP base as much as the 2018 Kavanaugh nomination fight, which contributed to several Democratic Senate defeats. Then there's Senate Homeland Security Chairman Ron Johnson, who takes it to a full deep state level.
Do you not trust the FBI? You don't trust the CIA?
No,
I'm just very confused here.
Absolutely
you don't trust
not.
either
After
of those
Peter Strzok and
agencies.
Lisa Page?
Okay.
After James Comey,
you believe the FBI and the CIA,
John
these
Brennan? No, I don't
agencies?
trust any of these guys in the Obama administration. I don't trust any of them.
You don't trust them now? You trust them now?
No, I didn't trust them back then.
Colin Powell, never a Trump fan, all but called Republicans cowardly.
They need to get a grip. And when they see things that are not right, they need to say something about it.
Some Republicans, like Rob Portman of Ohio, are starting to follow a yeah, but roadmap laid out in an op-ed by Fox's Tucker Carlson. Portman told the Columbus Dispatch the president should not have raised the Biden issue on that call, period. But added, I don't view it as an impeachable offense.
And I talked to a House Republican, Wolf, today who, just like Rob Portman, said that he thinks the president's call to Ukraine's leader was totally inappropriate. But he also told me he isn't ready to say that publicly yet because he doesn't know if there's another, quote, Jack in the Box out there. So he's reluctant to go too far in supporting the president. And he said he's talked to a lot of his House Republican colleagues who say the same thing.
Very interesting indeed. You know, Jamie, you know a lot of these Republicans. You cover them. Are they becoming increasingly reluctant to side with the president? What are you hearing?
So to use Dana's word privately, I don't know how many times we're going to be using that, but Republican sources privately are saying something very different from what they're saying publicly. One of them said, we have Trump exhaustion. They're also very worried that they do not know what is coming. There's one whistleblower. There seems to be now a second whistleblower. A lawyer said they may represent multiple whistleblowers, and they really don't know what evidence is going to come out. They do think, however, that it is likely, if not inevitable, that in the House they will get to impeachment. So what happens beyond that? They have to watch the polls. They have to deal with Donald Trump. But right now, they are looking for a larger desk to hide under.
Very interesting. What are you hearing, Abby?
Well, it's interesting that Jamie mentioned that they're looking at the polls. We've heard the president today spending a lot of time inflating polls. He said twice today that he's gone up in one poll that he didn't name some 17 points. That's clearly not true, but he's trying to put on a brave face on this, reassuring Republicans that the base is with him and that it would be a politically risky move to move forward with kind of breaking ranks here. So this is a president who is holding the line, but the question is how long? You're already seeing some Republicans test driving some messages that they can possibly use if they decide to say, for example, what the president did was inappropriate, but we don't think that it warrants actually removing him from office through impeachment.
Most of the Republicans, as you know, Phil, they're reluctant to criticize the president as far as the Ukraine phone call was concerned, but they're increasingly coming out now and criticizing the president's decision on Syria.
Yeah, I mean, they've got to. We have an ally who fought ISIS with us. I worked with the Kurds when I was in government. They've been with us since the Iraq War. And all of a sudden, without evidently a lot of consultation, you step back and say, hey, Kurds, we're out of here. It's not just about the Kurds, it's about their families, because the Turks are going to come across the border, and the people that we told we would protect are going to get killed. This is a day I think I'd be ashamed to be an American. You've got to tell an ally, we told you we'd stick with you, and now, for that choice, you may die. It's unbelievable.
And some of the Republican criticism, Dana, we'll put it up on the screen, some of the words we're hearing, these are not from Democrats, from Republicans. Huge mistake, betraying an ally, disastrous, ensures ISIS comeback, short-sighted and irresponsible, a stain on America's honor. We could go on, but you get the point.
Right. And look, I mean, this is about a policy that Republicans during the Obama administration criticized that president for intensely. And this is a rare area where you're seeing some consistency in politics, meaning all of the Republicans that came out eagerly going after the president today, it's because they believe, you look at recent history, it's true, by pulling out, what you're doing is you are going to allow ISIS to come back. The caliphate is gone, but it wasn't that long ago that they were a real viable threat. And by pulling out U.S. troops, it's going to allow them to come back, just like from the perspective of all these Republicans, happened when the U.S. pulled